some pizza. So for those of you who aren't aware, Girls Inc. is a national nonprofit, and we serve girls across the United States and Canada in summer and after-school programming that empowers them to be strong, smart, and bold. And in addition to this work, we also advocate for girls' rights and opportunities. And most recently, in October, we launched the Girls 2 campaign, and that's what's bringing us here today. We're going to be talking about a serious issue today. We're going to be talking about sexual harassment and violence. And we're standing in the feet of giants, women and survivors who've come forward to share their stories and raise awareness about how prevalent sexual harassment and violence is in the workplace and in college. But still, so many people aren't aware of the fact that these issues also affect K-12 students. So that's what we're going to be talking about today, what we can all do as individuals, as a society, to change the culture so that these issues aren't so prevalent and so they don't affect so many people. So in addition to raising awareness and listening to the stories and experiences and potential solutions of these wonderful young people, we also are asking you all to take a personal commitment, the Girls 2 Pledge, which is really at the heart of our campaign. So you can go to girls2.girlsinc.org and take that pledge, and also ask those people in your lives and your community to take the pledge as well, because we know that addressing this problem really takes everyone and all of us to really take these steps to create a culture where girls are safe, respected, and valued. I'm going to now turn it over to Jessica Hubbard, who's Director of Programming at Girls Inc. of Orange County, and has really been the point person for planning this event, so a huge thank you to her and to her team for all of their hard work.
Thank you, Sonia. Hello all, thank you so much for being here this evening. I'm so happy to have you all here. Just want to make sure that I also give a shout out to our partner agencies that are here. Thank you all so much for coming and supporting what we're doing, being partners with us in raising awareness and also educating the community. So thank you all. Please, if you haven't already, take some time to visit their tables and get access to the resources and information that they're able to share that are not just available this evening, but always available. So the first portion of this evening is going to be this incredible panel of amazing, esteemed youth speakers. And the second portion of our evening will be a town hall style, where we'll have sort of a modified Q&A, where we'd love for the audience to participate and share, and also ask questions. Here's the caveat. We request that youth that are in the audience, if you share your experiences and your opinions and your thoughts. But adults, if you would like to share, if you could limit that to just questions only, that would be very much appreciated. We'd really like the focus of this evening to be about the experiences and the truth that the youth have to share. So adults, we welcome you to jump up there and speak, but let's have those comments phrased in questions to sort of get more out of our youth to share more about their experiences that are happening in the schools. And now, it's my great honor and privilege to introduce our moderator this evening, who is a lifetime resident of Orange County. She has spent 25 years working in nonprofits and education. She's a former classroom teacher, so she gets what's going on in our schools. She's taught in elementary schools, and she also has experience in secondary schools. She's currently a lecturer for private and public universities, and when she does speak and lecture, she's focusing all of her work in the area of equity. We're talking about race and gender and LGBTQ issues. So she's able to lend a lot of information to this conversation, and also her passion. She currently owns her own consulting firm, and she's able to provide strategic processing direction to schools in elementary and secondary schools in that area. And that's all throughout Southern California. She is also a former team member for Planned Parenthood and the Anti-Defamation League. So this is not just professional, this is also personal. We're so happy that she's here to lend her voice, to bring out the voices of our youth, and share her passion. This is Danielle Navamijares. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome. How exciting that this is happening right in our own backyards, having conversations that are much needed to have. So important, and I'm so thrilled that these young women are here to be able to share their stories, their insight. I think there's a lot to be learned and a lot to be gained from voices that we don't often go to first for solutions. So I'm thrilled that I'm part of this. I do want to start out, and forgive me, I am going to read it because I want to make sure that I get it correctly. I want to first define sexual harassment as the law does. So I will be reading so that I don't misspeak. Sexual harassment is described as unwelcome conduct of sexual nature. It does not have to be physical. It can be verbal acts like name calling, requests for sexual favors, sexual comments, jokes, gestures, images and graphics, graffiti, and other written statements or actions that may be threatening, harmful, or humiliating. It's a very broad scope, and I think that because it's so broad, it really gives license to talking about everyday experiences that sometimes go swept under the rug, or because we're so discomforted by what's happening that we might tend to brush it off. And so I'm welcoming the conversation tonight with these young women. I want to make sure that we know that sexual harassment is something that we have heard about for many years, and some of us may have experienced it. But I would say that when I was hearing more about it, it was in the workplace or at college universities. The fact is it's happening in our schools, our secondary schools, and even as young as our elementary school students can talk about the name calling and bullying. They may not use the word sexual harassment, but when they describe and tell their story, it definitely falls under that category. And so when you think about that, you think this is a conversation that us adults need to start to bear the weight of, rather than leaving our young people to do that on their own. I want to also talk about schools present a unique opportunity for us to proactively address these problems and early by helping to educate our young people. And I recognize, as for parents, that might feel like it belongs in our house, and I think that part of that is true, but our students spend the majority of time in their schools. We're having an interview, so I just want to acknowledge we're having an interview in the hallway. It's completely fine. It's all connected to this. Though distracting. So I just want to say that the conversations are not taking my job as a parent, but it's more adding to that conversation and knowing that there's allies and support to have that conversation. I also want to present this really key piece before I move on to the young women. 1 in 4 girls are sexually assaulted by the time they reach age 18, and 2 out of 3 girls are harassed. That is recent data from the National Sexual Violence Resource Center. I want to lend weight to that. I can't wait until we see no stats in that area. And not because we're under-reported, but because it's not happening. So with that, I'm going to turn to really the magic of the evening. I'm going to invite our students to introduce themselves, and then we will get started with these Q&As.
Hello, I'm Rachel. I'm 16, and my pronoun is she.
My name is Esmeralda. I am 17, about to turn 18, and my pronouns are she, her, and ella.
My name is Stephanie, and I'm 16 years old, and my pronouns are she and her.
Hi, my name is Nikita, and I'm 15 years old, and my pronouns are she and her.
My name is Jasmine, my pronouns, I'm 18, and my pronouns are she.
Can we give them a welcome? So much for being here tonight. The tip of my tongue is holding the word brave. And yes, you are brave. And you are magic. Because I think without voice and story, we really don't know. We really don't know what the everyday experience is. Even when our kids come home and talk to us about the school day, we don't know. So with that, I'm going to move us into questions. We'll be a little bit freestyling, so forgive us as we muddle along. I'll invite folks to answer questions, and then we'll move on. I will say this, that due to the content and the nature of the conversation, will just say that I'll ask everyone to just be really mindfully respectful of these young women and their stories. And I also want to acknowledge that there may be some triggering things that you hear tonight, and no one ever tells us it's okay to laugh. So I will say this: it's okay if we have some tears, and it's all about us coming together and really trying to turn this right side. Okay. All right. So my first question, young women, talk about your thoughts about the problem of violence in our communities, and particularly sexual harassment. And if you could even talk about why you want to sit on a panel to talk about this. So anyone feel compelled to start us off? Okay.
Well, you see, you hear it in the news a lot, and maybe you might even have experienced it too, maybe not to the extreme, but you've experienced it. I think it should be brought more to our attention because we haven't been talking about this. As human beings, we haven't been talking about this. It's just been now since people are actually standing up for themselves and going, wow, we need to stand up for ourselves because this is a real issue, I'm kind of glad that it's happening now, that people are actually aware that it's still violence. Just because it's sex doesn't mean that there's no violence involved. It's still violence. And people never took that as violence. They took that as something normal that we do, but it could be violent. It could be anything. And I think that it's really good that we're bringing it to our attention now than later.
I feel like it's important to have this conversation and important for me to be sitting up here on this panel to make sure that we're addressing this issue and we're truly talking about it. I feel like as young women, a lot of times we feel desensitized about the sexual harassment that we're facing in schools, and we don't even feel comfortable calling it what it is. And so for me, the biggest thing about being here is providing that perspective, making sure that our voices as young women are being heard.
And I would just like to add to that, that it is in our community. No matter how much you may not know or not see it or want to believe that it's not, it is. And it's in our schools. And that's unfortunately. And so I think with the fact that we are bringing it to the public attention and we have girls speaking up about it and saying, me too, I experienced this too, and I've seen it too, and I felt it too, no matter to what extent, I think that that's a huge step in the right direction.
I think that it is important because you see it at school, you see it everywhere, and they're not doing anything about it. So, why? I'm sitting here. It's okay. I'm sitting here because you see it at school, and you feel bad for these girls. I'm part of the league, and I know how to deal with these issues. And it's sad to see that you see girls getting harassed, and they don't do anything about it, and they just sit there.
Yeah, I also think it is a very important topic to talk about because it's definitely one of those topics that nobody talks about, and especially I definitely know how it is to feel like that. I wouldn't be able to get through what I got through without Rosie. And understanding what abuse was, because I never knew this can happen to people. And especially at school, and guys, like, they make a little comment, and you think, it's so funny. But you never say anything about it. We always talk about it, ourselves, but I never knew what sexual harassment was. Until, I guess, recently. So talking about it matters.
Thank you so much. Thank you for
bringing the realness to this issue. I'm going to try to hold it together too, so I'm just letting you know right now.
You talked a little bit about it. You alluded a little bit about it. Can you share with us what this kind of behavior looks like on school campuses?
Well, at school, we go to school to learn, right? And especially like in K to 12 schools, like you go there to learn and you don't have time to do that kind of stuff. That's what most people think. But really, it can happen anywhere. It can happen between, it can happen anytime. It can happen between a teacher, like a student to student. It's really sad, and like, I see it a lot within like the students too. Like you'll see people catcalling each other, saying nasty things like, "Oh, like you have a nice butt," but like now that girl can't wear her favorite shorts. That girl can't wear her favorite skirt or her favorite dress anymore because she keeps getting that comment, and it makes her feel uncomfortable. And to some people that may not sound extreme, but that girl can't show who she is because of that one comment anymore. Like she can't feel comfortable at school anymore, and it really just ruins her it somehow ruins her education too. She can't focus on school because she's too worried about how people are going to perceive her because of what she's wearing or because of how she looks. And that's kind of from what I've seen at my school. I see that a lot, and it's really messed up. I mean, when it comes to students and teachers, I don't hear of it that often, but you know it's out there. You'll always see something in the news like, oh, a teacher did this to one of his or her students, and it's really sad too, because as a matter of fact, it actually happened to my school. One of my teachers, my drama teacher, he was a student teacher at the time, and he became a teacher. And while he was a teacher, recently in January, he got arrested for sexually assaulting a young boy in 2011. And it came to a surprise to me because someone I thought was so nice, so friendly, and so respectful could do that. It really shocked me, and it really shocked our whole school. And I guess it really changed our school too.
I think that the way you see it is basically just like it's catcalling, it's like staring, like not just staring in a way like oh, like looking at you, like they look at you in like a sexually way, like you just look at them and like you see it all the time, like at school, like I just look at them like, okay, you're gross, but like you're disgusting. And then like there's people like don't like they have too much pride to admit like I'm wrong. It's like, what if you were doing this to your little sister? Or like someone was doing it to your little sister. And then also like it doesn't just take place with the students, it can happen with the teachers. It's like that's even like more gross. It's gross, like it's more gross than actual students, because like you probably have a family and you're doing this to a student in your class, and like I get you're trying to have a friendly conversation with your student, but you're getting a little too friendly. And they act like it's normal. And then I feel like sometimes the school, like when you go speak up to the school about it, they don't believe you because like it's a teacher, if you have a degree, it's like I'm a student working for that degree.
I think that a lot of what I've seen is just a lot of the comments that young people make sometimes, a lot of slut shaming that happens in our schools, and people just not knowing what boundaries are. And I feel like a lot of times I haven't even known what those boundaries are. Like I know that something makes me feel uncomfortable, but no one's used to calling someone out on that or feeling intimidated. Like it's a power imbalance. Like you can't question, a teacher, for example, in a situation of being that close to you and saying, "Oh, I'm not okay with that." But like you can't really say that. You don't feel comfortable saying that. And maybe they aren't ill-intentioned, but the impact of that situation is still happening. So I think not knowing what the boundaries are and not knowing how to address that is a lot of what I see.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. I think you're touching on some really deep issues around safety and even expectations of trusted of people where we feel like we can trust who are in our classrooms and friends, even our friends when we see being told something about how she looks today or the way her body looks in certain things. I think we're really talking about some bigger issues around safety. So let me ask you the next question. And Stephanie, you started to talk a little bit about this, so maybe you want to kick us off. What happens when students do report issues of sexual harassment or violence at school? That's the first part of the question.
I think when you report it, I feel like they're ignored or they're like, you're probably crazy, like you're making this up. And then I feel like after that, like it just discourages them to like go back and tell them, no, this is true. You bring your parents or everything, like isn't true. But I've seen it at my school too. A girl actually got her parents in. And then also like I feel like they don't report stuff because they're too afraid or they know that they're gonna get ignored.
Like at my school when I had a guy friend say a sexual harassment comment and our teacher kicked him out and said that was sexual harassment. He even asked her and I was wondering why was that sexual harassment. They don't explain it to you right there and then in front of the whole class so everybody knows certain comments you say you shouldn't say it.
I think when someone tells a story, especially as a young person, I think they're really ignored. I think they're really like, oh, you're young, like that doesn't count, or it doesn't count, or you're just craving attention, and that's where I cross the line at that because I think we all have voices, and I think it's really unfair how just because of our age we can't stand up for ourselves, and like we can look vulnerable to someone and get violated, but we can't stand up for ourselves, which is really messed up. And I feel like I've seen I've heard of lots of stories where women, even that grown women, have told their stories and no one believes them. People think they're crazy. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what else.
Adding on to that, I agree with Lupita in that way that for the most part, when you confront someone about it and you tell them what happened, or when a girl does that and they tell someone that they should be trusted and that they're reporting what happened to them, for the most part, they're treated as a liar, or they're treated as it not being important, or they don't get the attention that they need. And instead of being like treated as a liar, they should be treated as a survivor. Like, you overcame this and you went through that, and you should be getting the help that you need. A statistic that I know is that 2 to 10% of sexual assault is false. Like that, from what is reported, that is so small because of what is reported. Like that, everything, okay, so what I'm trying to say, sorry, is that it is true. Like, from what is actually being told, they're just trying to tell their story. They're trying to come up front and tell them exactly what happened. And so when they're treated as it being false, it can't, like, you cannot tell them again, you know? Like, you cannot come forward with your story when you're treated as it being wrong.
Just to second everything that you've been saying, it's minimized a lot. Like they make young people second guess themselves. Like, did this actually affect me? But if someone's coming up to you and telling you this and reporting this, at that point you know that it must have had an effect on this young person, and it must be important. And I think that's what a lot of school administration fails to realize, is that what has happened and what has been reported is very important, and it's very real, and it's something that something that you should definitely be looking into?
I think that what you're bringing up around showcases why there's a lack of reporting, or maybe why young women don't report. And I think that you said that you've seen girls be harassed and not say anything and not tell anyone. It sounds like those are some of the issues of why we don't. Nobody wants to be accused of lying or just not believed or dismissed because of age. So we're going to move into later in this topic. I'll be asking you what you think can be done to help support that. My hope is that in talking about this, that you feel hopeful. And Lupita, you had mentioned that we should be able to stand up for ourselves. And I'm hoping that you're seeing that being on this panel is a way to stand up. Don't you agree on that? Oh, yeah. So my next question is, how are young people really learning about what a healthy relationship is? Especially when we have all of these side things that are happening. Where are you learning about what a healthy relationship is?
I believe pretty strongly in this. We're either learning it from our parents or we're learning it from the media. I don't think our schools really teaching us that. They'll give us like the most minimal sex ed, and that's it. But like you'll see tweets like girls will put, "Oh, I want my boyfriend to care about the little things, get me flowers and things like that, respect me." And I'm like, okay, so I'm guessing that's a good relationship. Like that's a healthy relationship, and people would like write things on social media like this is a healthy relationship, and your parents, maybe your parents would say, oh, make sure you get someone who respects you. You don't get that from schools. You don't get that treatment from schools, and especially for the people who don't have parents or don't have parents who are responsible or care about that situation, those situations. They don't get it. Like they don't get that kind of education they need for their relationships. They don't get that. They may not even know what sexual violence is, and they might even be going through it, which really sucks because we're letting it happen. Like we're letting our schools get away with it, and we're letting our schools like not teach and not educate us sufficiently to know this. And we've seen it a lot with like older people, like they've been through it, and that's proof that we need more sex ed because they didn't get the sufficient amount. And we could be that generation that does and gets educated and does know what's right or wrong and does know when to speak out and everything.
That's a super mic drop right there. We could be the generation that actually has adequate sexual education.
So I think young people are, for the most part, getting it from media. Definitely like the posts that you see, and even myself nowadays, I'm able to recognize like, oh my God, that post was super unhealthy. Like that's so unhealthy to have that much of an attachment or like that much control that you need from a partner. And I think at the same time, like while acknowledging that media does teach that, it's also very heteronormative, the media that we see. And so like queer young people don't have anything to base what a healthy relationship should look like. Like there's very little of it in media. And when there is one, it's like a documentary and it's very depressing and it's an unhealthy relationship that's happening. And so you're getting it from media and you're not getting it from schools. And even when it comes from schools, a lot of times it's heteronormative. So I think that's an issue that we have to confront is, one, getting sexual health education that's comprehensive, but also making sure that our teachers are aware that they need to be making it inclusive for everyone and not just in this hetero, cisgender kind of situation.
And so where I got my healthy relationship, what education was from Girls Inc. That's the only place that I've ever been taught this is what it should look like, and this is what it should feel like, and this is what is not okay, and this is how love shouldn't hurt. That is the only place that I've ever gotten a true definition for it. And so for the unlucky people who don't have Girls Inc., then they're just guessing, and they're learning from the relationship where everyone should be getting a Girls Inc. And so that's one of the key points of tonight, is that our schools should not only be educating us about like subjects like history and math, but also the things of life that you need to know, like what a healthy relationship looks like and what consent means, and how you can come forward with the information that you've been sexually harassed and what that is like. And so I definitely think that schools could be doing more, and that they could be the Girls Inc. Like your school should be your Girls Inc.
Esme, you talked a little bit about this. I'm going to ask you to lead off in this question. What role do you think that schools could play in helping young people better understand what a healthy relationship is? And also, what does that inclusion look like?
I think in general, even when coming up to the panel, my biggest point that I wanted to make is that our schools set the tone for our society. Like we go through our education, K through 12, and then beyond, hopefully, for everyone. It sets the tone for our culture and our society, and that's where we kind of base how we're going to be in the outside world. And so for me, like I mentioned before, it's making sure that our classrooms are inclusive of LGBTQ young people, inclusive of disabled people, inclusive of everyone when they get their sexual health education, so that they know what something healthy should look like. Because a lot of times we're just guessing. And like, I went through a situation where I was in an unhealthy relationship, and the way that I learned about healthy relationships was having gone through that, knowing that's not what it should look like, and that's not how a young person should learn about healthy relationships. It should not have to be through experience. It should be someone, guiding you and, being the example and making sure that you're aware of the signs.
Piggyback on what Esme just said, I've also been through a hard relationship. And I'm sorry to go to college, and I have learned nothing at my school for health or related to sex. I mean, we have a health education class, but that's online. They expect us to learn everything online. That isn't okay. We should be learning from our teachers' experience. What's consent? I didn't learn about consent from school. I mean, my mom will teach me. I learned about consent from Planned Parenthood, and I've learned about healthy relationship from Laura's house. Those are my places to go to when I need help to figure out, is this right or is this not right?
Anyone else want to weigh in on this? Well, me and Jasmine go to the same school, so we got the most minimal health education. For sex ed, we watched a 1 hour video in 7th grade about the reproductive system, and we left it at that. They didn't tell us anything. I learned so much from Girls Inc., and I think that's what helped me out. I learned about consent, and I learned about what sex looks like and what the types of sex there is. And I think if I would not have gotten that, I would have probably got my mom's traditional Mexican sex ed, don't have it till you're married, that kind of thing. That kind of thing. And I don't think I would have been very well educated on that. I mean, I respect her culture, but I don't think I would have been very well educated if I did not get my sex ed from here, from Girls Inc., or from any program like Laura's House. I got taught from Laura's House what a healthy relationship looks like. My school didn't care. Our school doesn't care about what's going to happen after high school. We're going to leave and we're just going to be on the yearbooks and that's it. And that's what really sucks, is that they don't care about our
our life, our actual life. They just care if they just look good as a school.
I also agree with Rachel and Lupe because I didn't learn about this at school. The last sex education I had was in 8th grade, and I only watched the reproductive system video too. And then last year, I learned about AIDS. Like, I already learned about that, the Girls Inc. and everything, but I wouldn't have had an actual education about this if it weren't for Girls Inc. And at school, I understand your main focus is going back to college and everything, but you also, like, they care about making the school look pretty and going to college. I understand that part, but there's more to life than that.
I just wanted to add something really quickly to like second what they were saying. Is I think it's really inconsistent when we receive this education and how we receive this education. Because I know this, even if we had this very good curriculum that we're using, it's also up to like counselors and the student when they want to take it. So I took mine, when was it? Like over the summer, and it was an online course, and I learned practically nothing. Like I already knew everything that I knew because I had been in the community and doing organizing and had gone to workshops. So I had the knowledge, but I realized that like my peers who were taking that online course did not have that same knowledge. Like they had to like Google the answers and then like copy paste, and so the quality of it was very, very low. And even I got it like the summer going into my junior year, and at that point I had already gone through this terrible relationship that I didn't know how to recognize the signs. So, this is education that we should be getting when we're young, and it being consistent.
I like that consistent messaging and timing, and maybe from a real person, so that there can be some dialogue there. You started to talk a little bit about this, all of you have. So I'm going to front load it with, there's been a long time debate about whether or not sexual education should be in schools, taught by schools, and if it is, how much, how little, when, all of the things that you all are talking about. So what are your thoughts about that? Like, when's ideal? And Esme, you can kick us off with that.
I think, honestly, as young as, kids start asking questions. I mean, that's just me. You don't have to give them this, long presentation that we have in high school. But, answering children's questions honestly. And I think you can start to do that more and more, ending elementary school, going into middle school. And I think that that's already what's happening here. And, yeah, so I think, like I mentioned before, it being consistent and it being inclusive. And,
Other thoughts about when it should?
I think that it should start at a young age too, because I don't know. I think I believed until I was 10 that a bird brought me to my door. That they brought me to my door, and I didn't know what that was. I didn't know until I was older, when I was starting middle school. And then now that I think about it, it's sad to know that. It's sad to know that you see all these cases at school, and it's like I need to share my knowledge with you, but then they're probably gonna look at you and you're dumb, or why do you care and stuff. But then it's also it has to start at a young age, because if not, they're not gonna know maybe stuff happens, and they're not gonna know what to do, or they're gonna be too afraid to speak up.
I do think it should start at a young age, maybe later in elementary school, when they start becoming way more curious. Honestly, I didn't get any at all, and I think it's very important, because in 5th and 6th grade, I was I'd look at a pregnant woman, I'm how does that work? How does the baby come out of her? How does that work? And no one told me that until I found out, watching a documentary or a movie, or until someone finally explained it to me at Girls Inc. And it's kind of sad. We should teach both sexes to learn to respect each other too. I think that's very, very important. We should teach boys oh, this is how you approach a girl. We should teach girls this is how you approach a boy in a more respectful manner, and that we should teach them at a young age so they can become gentler than ladies and they can be more respectful within each other. I think that's very important.
Yeah, I also think we should start at a young age, maybe earlier in elementary, but not too early. When I went to elementary, we learned about puberty, and I started puberty young, and that's when I was sexually assaulted. And I feel like right then and there, we should have learned at least if somebody touches you and you don't feel comfortable, then we should say something like, okay, I didn't like that what you did, or tell an adult. Like just the little things we should have learned.
Adding on to all of their points, I think that in the way that it should be taught is that it should be a conversation. Because I think that the way that we've all grown up is that, especially in schools and even in your homes, that it has been like a taboo topic. Like you cannot talk about it, you don't think about it, if you bring it up, then you're shut down and you're dismissed for it, you're looked down upon for it. And I think that it should definitely be something where you can have an open conversation about it and you can get the answers to your questions that you need to know, because this is the education that you should be getting. This is the things that you should know, and you should not be looked down upon if you ask these questions or you are wondering. And so you should have an open and honest conversation about it and know that this is okay and know that this is healthy and know that this is just a part of life.
So I just want to continue to uplift some of the things that have come up in the panel, particularly around the heteronormative narrative, and being mindful that even in our language and the way we introduce or leave out concepts, that we are actually leaving out folks who have not been invited to the table, aren't even recognized to be asked to come to the table, are further marginalized and further made invisible. So there's opportunity for allyship as we're thinking about what our young folks need and hearing what they're saying, that I want to just keep reminding us as adults that we have an obligation that all our students are taken care of. Thank you for driving that home. Under federal law, Title IX schools have an obligation to ensure that you don't face sex discrimination, and that includes anything from the team you want to be on, the restroom you want to use, to sexual harassment and sexual violence. Do you believe that your school is doing everything they possibly can to protect you? And do you know your rights?
I'm going to have to go with the yes and no. Sometimes they make me feel like they're protected over us, and sometimes they don't. Like, I see I have a few friends who are trans, and they don't want to go by their legal name. And some teachers don't respect that. Some teachers call them by their legal name, and it really annoys me. Like, it's just like, no, that's my friend, and that's his name. And that's what I don't like about school sometimes, is that, or teachers sometimes they do that. I don't like how they profile kids that way. So I've seen it, and it really triggers me. And what was the rest of the question?
Yeah, what was the rest of it? Are schools doing everything to educate their students on what their rights are?
I feel like they're kind of just like, oh my God, let's just get this over with. Do like the most minimal, like just what they need. They're doing what they need so they can so they don't break a law. They're not doing what we need so they can protect us, which we've seen like clearly. This wouldn't be happening if they've taught us. So,
Since me and we go to the same school, and at our school when I was a freshman, there was this girl in 8th grade who had told, I guess, a teacher, or it was on the news, that she was in a relationship with this older man, and he had ended up coming to our school, and our teacher thought it was
a burden. Like, we had to lock down. He was like, this is a waste of my time. I could be teaching you guys stuff. But, like, you can be teaching us what's going on. Like, teaching us that this is unacceptable. And everybody ended up blaming her for, like, what happened that day. And I felt bad because, like, our school isn't teaching us, like, the common things that we need to learn. Like, I understand learning math and English and all that. It's going to help us, but, like, that's not what we're going to need when we go off. We're not in school anymore.
So I also think that they're not really doing their part, but then they are at times, because then, like, they tell you, okay, like, if you need help, just ask. Okay, you're gonna go ask for help, but what help are they actually referring to? If you think about it, it's like they're referring to, like, you need help, like, filling out your college application, or if you need this. And then it's also sad to say that you see everything at school. Like, there's a park next to my school, so, like, I can see, like, you see these girls, and then, like, with their boyfriends, and you're like, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? Like, I'm not judging them, but, like, also, like, you're in a park in front of people, and then, like, it just makes you think. You're like, what is the school doing about it? Like, after school hours, the school doesn't really care about you. It's more like during school. But then, like, if we know, a lot of students don't know their rights too. So, like, what are they gonna do about it if they don't know what rights they have under the law, and, like, what in general they need to be doing at school? Because at school you have your education. Yeah, you go to school, you go to class, and during lunch, yeah, you socialize with your friends. You hear about all these girls and the guys too, and then you just think about it, like, how sad it is. You're like, what can I do to change this?
I have to agree. I think that our schools don't teach us how to hold them accountable, which makes sense because they don't want to be called out on what they're doing. But it's not fair that we have to go out of our way to figure out how we're going to deal with this problem when you should be there in the first place to help us. So they definitely don't teach us how to hold them accountable. A lot of folks don't know that they can actually report anything or that they can go above somebody's head. Like, you don't, if someone isn't listening to you, whether it's like an assistant principal, the principal, you can go to the district, you can go to the Department of Education, like, you can get your issue resolved and you can have it be heard. And I didn't learn any of this or any of my rights from school. I learned it from the LGBT Center in Orange County. And I've been organizing with them. And part of the work that we do there is like an LGBTQ student rights presentation, because we know that, like, these are young people that are extremely vulnerable and that aren't aware that there are laws specifically to protect them. And we're lucky that we're in California where there are those laws, but at the same time, people aren't being held accountable and it's not being implemented properly. And so, they're doing the very bare minimum and they're not being held accountable for it because we don't know how to hold them accountable.
Thank you. I have one last question. What would you like every person in this room to do as an ally? What do you need from people in this room to be an ally? Take out the doors and do, say, or be. What would you ask of the adults in the room?
Well, this is for adults, right? So this is to parents, to my adult friends. Be more of a friend, not more of a boss, not more of a parent, but more of like a friend. Not more of like a parent who's like will get you in trouble for these sort of things, for having sex, for doing that. But more like of a friend, so you can talk to and you can be comfortable to talk about these things with, and you can report it with your friend. And I think that as adults need to be more friendly with younger people, so we can we can build that kind of trust and go like, wow, I can tell this person my experiences. I can tell this person what's been going on. I can tell this person like if I'm being violated, and we need. I think this is a commitment for us, for me, like a young person, and for adults too. I think it's everyone should commit to it, and adults too. Yes.
So to summarize what Lupe was saying is that I think that we need unity between us, is that we can't be looking at it from one being an adult, you're in a higher position, and so you're going to treat them differently, or we're going to approach the topic differently because it's with adults. I think that we need to be united and be standing up together as one, trying to end this conversation around sexual harassment and sexual assault. And I think we need to be together on this topic, and to know that just because you're older or you're younger, it doesn't mean that you should be treated any differently, or that you should be approaching the topic any differently because of your age or where you are in life. I think that the fact that this is a common issue and it affects everyone means that we need to be approaching it as everyone, and we need to be united, and we need to make the conversations that are going to stop it.
I feel like there's a lot of things that adults could be doing, but to leave some guiding advice that I have is listen with compassion to young people, and uplift their voices. Uplift the voices like you all are doing now. Uplift the voices of young people in marginalized communities, and never stop learning. Because I feel like we may grow complacent with the knowledge that we have, but there's always knowledge that's currently being made. Identities that you may not know in the LGBT community, whether it's being non-binary, what trans means. Being aware of that and knowing that you're never going to know it all, and that's okay, but the intention should be there to continue to grow.
I feel like parents just need to educate us. My house is, we are able to talk about sex with freely, but in other people's houses, that's not how it is. And if parents don't know where to find the education to talk to their students about, they should go to the community, like local Girls Inc. or organization they know, they'll give you the information so you can relate what they give you to us.
To add on to that, I know at my house it's safe to talk, to say anything, but I know that other kids my age live in fear, to see what their family thinks of them. But for me, I was lucky enough to, be given a family where, they listen to you and they help guide you, and bring you back up to where you were. But I feel like parents just need to listen and, not, if they tell them something, don't bring them down, don't yell at them, just listen to them. Listen to them, let them finish talking, and then tell them, don't scream at them, just talk to them, as you were their friend.
Thank you. Folks, can we give a round of applause to
Perfect. We are going to transition to the town hall portion and incorporate the Q&A, and we'll take some, if there's any live stream questions coming in, we'll also be doing some of those, and those will come from Sonia. So any comments, reactions, questions that you have of our panelists? And I think the procedure is that if you do have a question, you're going to go up to the mic in the back. Is that correct?
You can stand from your seat. That mic actually is not on, so the mic can pass it around.
Okay. Yes, my name is Beatrice, and I am a child abuse survivor and advocate for a law firm. We handle sexual assault claims, and we also have the Zero Abuse Project. It's a national organization. And a lot of times, people don't believe women, because they come forward many years after. So I wanted to ask you, why do you think women wait so long? It shouldn't matter how long we wait. I mean, they should believe us. So why do you guys think people wait so long?
I think they wait because they're just afraid. They're afraid to, what people are going to think about them, or, they're afraid to open their mouth. Because probably it's, maybe they're also threatened. They're if you say something, I'm going to do this to you, or I'm going to do something to your family, or, you're going to regret it.
Adding on to that, I would say it is definitely fear, because fear is what silences us in every situation. And so when you're afraid that you will be treated differently, or that you will be looked down upon because this happened to you, or that you came forward, or that you won't be believed, that's what keeps people quiet. And that's what keeps this not being talked about. And so I think definitely, and then as the years go by and you are treated like, oh, that happened so many years ago, you should be getting over it. It's definitely that women especially, we have been marginalized from the beginning of time. And so the fact that this has happened to us, and that we're supposed to be treated as if it's nothing, and that you could have done more, you could have just said no, I think that it's definitely fear that keeps us quiet, and that's what we need to stop.
A lot about like victim blaming, I feel like, is what stops people. Being afraid of what this might mean for your own future. You know, what if you make this allegation and it doesn't, like, they don't find anything, and then you're just left being someone who cried wolf, and it didn't actually happen because it wasn't technically proven. And so just that fear of like ending without any actual conclusion to it, because if you open this up, it opens up a whole nother wound, and you have to reprocess that all over again. And if you go through a court case, if you have to follow through with everything, then you're reliving it constantly. And so there's that fear of like, do I actually want to do this? Should I just leave this behind and try to get over it? Is that gonna be more helpful for me in my process of healing?
Are there more questions? Thank you, Beatrice. Are there more questions? I can in the back.
So there are people that are already kind of set in their ways and think that something's appropriate when it's not. It makes us uncomfortable. How can we teach those people, if they're adults or children? What would you recommend to tell them? What should we tell them? How do we get through to them?
I think consistently challenging them, making sure that like our laws are there to protect us, and when we're talking to them about it, leading from a place of compassion, of like relating to another person. I always like to, I feel the importance of storytelling and sharing narrative is so important, because when you hear someone talking about their story and how something made them feel, that just changes the way that you see a situation, whether it be another societal issue that's happening. When you hear someone talking about the effect that it really had on them, I think that changes the way that we see the issue. And I feel like that could be helpful when you're talking to people who are stuck in their ways. Like, show them like how this is actually affecting young people. Tell them the statistics, and back it up with, you know, this is the law and you should be doing this and providing this for young people.
I definitely agree with that, and I think that it should be a continual conversation, that we should be continually updating this and reopening it. Like, you don't just see one video once and call that it. I think you should definitely keep the conversation open and going, and if you ever question something, or if you ever are unsure, or if you ever feel that something isn't right, that you can come forward and you can bring it up again, and that won't make you different, and that will be accepted, and that will replace all of the stereotypes from before, that this is just part of our society, that we talk about this, and that this is an open thing.
Thank you so much for that question, because what comes to mind is knowledge is power, and that is really coming through with our panelists' stories. And I think that when folks, we need to be uncomfortable about conversations. I think if we're not, that means we've become more complacent, and we're not attuned to the things that are actually coming forward for our own young people. So I say that as a parent too, and I'm mindful that I'm going to be uncomfortable. I should be uncomfortable. And it's okay to be uncomfortable, because we'll work through it. But the fact is that when we empower our young people with information, that doesn't mean that we're offering the license to go and do, but it's rather, I know how to protect myself now. I know what to look for. All of these young women have talked about, had I known what I know now, maybe I wouldn't have experienced some of the things that I experienced, because I didn't know
any different. And I think that's a very powerful statement. Are there other questions? Do we have a question from live stream at all? And then I see you.
So one question that was asked was, about this not being a problem that girls need to fix, that it's on women to fix. What would you say to your best guy friend or to a guy at your school about how they can be an ally in this issue? That's my question.
Actually, I do have a guy friend who's been through that. It's a small world. Like it's guys too, and they can go through this too, and they can go through it from a relationship. They can be in an abusive relationship, and I feel like guys need to let the world know that they can be abused too, because they're seen as the strong ones. They're seen as the ones who are tougher. They're seen as the ones who are usually giving the abuse, but it's not. Sometimes that's not the case. Sometimes it's the other way around. They need to speak out just like we are right now.
I have a question. Can you repeat the question?
Yeah. The question was about how men and boys can be allies in preventing violence. What they can do to be part of prevention.
I feel like the language that they use is a big thing, at least at my school. The way that they talk about other women and calling out their friends. Because I know I tell my friends and I'll call them out when they're saying something that's completely inappropriate or they're slut shaming somebody. And I'll call them out on it. But I don't know that they're calling out their friends on it. And so the system just repeats itself. And then, those young people who are having those conversations in high school have younger siblings who overhear that conversation. And so they think that it's okay to talk about women that way or to talk about other people that way. And so I think being educated, listening to what we're saying, but then taking that back to your friends and continuing that conversation and making people uncomfortable, because making people uncomfortable is a part of making that change that we want to see.
I agree with Esme also, because if you think about it, you're like, if you tell them you're like, this isn't right, and they're gonna be like, okay, they think about it and they're like, okay, this isn't right. But then if they go back to a conversation with their friends, that's all their friends are talking about, and they know it's not right, and they're not speaking up. And I think they should be speaking up, because to go back, to what Lupe said, that guys can also go through toxic sexual abuse and toxic relationships. If they tell you, oh, don't talk to this person, that's not okay. They're not telling you this because they want you all for themselves. They're also telling you this because they don't want you to talk to this person. They want you to stay away from your friends, and that's not okay.
On the floor? Did we accidentally ask it in
Oh,
our
yeah, that
live
was
stream?
exactly my question.
I have another question that's kind of related to that one. What do you want boys to know about how girls want to be treated?
I like compliments. I love compliments. I love getting that attention, but I don't like being catcalled. Like that's one thing, and there's a huge difference, because us girls, we've complimented guys. We might have even catcalled guys before too. We'll see like, wow, he's cute, we'll do that. And to us, that's more complimenting. But if a guy does it, that's more catcalling, which is a bit unfair. But they're actually two very different things that could happen to anyone. And a compliment is one thing. A compliment is face forward, telling the person that they look good today, that in a respectful manner. And the catcall is just like skimming past, just saying something sexual, saying something so the person can feel violated. It's two very different things, and I think that sometimes guys don't understand that, and sometimes us girls don't understand it either. But guys should know that they need to respect people in order to get a woman, or in order to get a partner. Like whatever sexuality they are, they need to give some sort of respect so they can receive it back, so they can be in a relationship. Because a lot of times, if they don't know that they're gonna end up being abusive, and it just all starts like out there, like if you're not respectful to other women or to your mother or to other females in your life, how would you be respectful to your partner? And that's what's very important, is that it just starts from respect to other people.
Yeah, I was going to second that, respect. I think that's at least what I want, is to be respected. And I also like compliments, but I don't like the implied sexual aspect of it. And I think that's what a lot of times is what makes people uncomfortable, is that implied, like, oh, I'm going to get this because I said that to you. But in reality, you could just be like, oh, you have really pretty eyes, or I really like your outfit today. And just be very straightforward with compliments. Because I feel like that's what a lot of times makes me feel uncomfortable, is when someone just comes up to me and says something kind of weird and out of place. And also knowing the situation that you're in, because sometimes it'll be like you're in the middle of class and they'll tell you something like that, and you're just like, whoa, like this isn't the situation where you should be saying that to me. So being aware of the situation and being very straightforward and kind in the way that you deliver it.
And I would like to add on to her point of, I really think it's just being cognizant of what you are doing and what you are saying, and paying extra attention to the way that it might sound and the way that it might make us feel, because no matter what you think that you're doing, you will never know how much it's going to affect a person that you're doing it to. Because you could just think that, oh, it happened once, and what she said didn't really mean what she said, and so it led to this, and now it's just over with. But that could have hurt that person for the rest of their life. And so I think that it's definitely that you need to remember that we are human beings, and that we can be seriously emotionally hurt by what is happened to us. So being cognizant and taking the time to understand how we're feeling will definitely break the barrier and help them to understand that, well, we need to be treating both of us with respect.
Also, I feel like guys should just ask our permission. If you want to give me a hug, I want you to ask me. Just don't come up to me and be like, give me a hug. Or if you want to go any further than that, you need to ask. It's not like you ask us one time and one time means all the time. Mm-hmm. No, sometimes I may give you a hug and then that's it. I mean, I wouldn't want a guy to touch me too long. I just don't like it. And also, if I know that you're disrespectful to a female or your mom or anybody, I feel like I don't have time for you. You gotta go.
Are there more questions from the audience?
There's one question from the live stream. What are some characteristics in adults that help you feel comfortable going to them to talk about this stuff?
Maybe adults who are more laid back, more understanding. Maybe more like of a young soul. Like they're more like young at heart. They'll go like, okay, I understand how you feel. I've been through this. Like, I think adults need to put themselves in our shoes, because our shoes, not the shoes that they were in when they were teenagers, because that's a totally different thing. This is us now, like our shoes, the way things are going right now with new technology and everything, and we need to be more laid back and just go, okay, well, I need to be less intimidating to this to like the youth. Like, I need to look more like a friend rather than like an authority figure. Like someone who looks more approachable. And I think that's what adults should strive to be.
I also agree with Lupe. Like, they have to be being a little more laid back. Like, be your friend, be the friend, don't be the adult. Like, also, being the friend, like, would help you, like, what if they open up more to you? And then also, like, don't be too questionable and, like, why did you go? Why did you do this? Like, don't be too questionable.
That I can go to is also very approachable, and they set the tone in their classroom to where, like, maybe even like on the first day addressing, like, you all can talk to me if you have any concerns, but additionally, it's me feeling like they're also aware of like what's going on, them addressing it, and like if I'm gonna go to them to talk about something, if I want to like confide in them, then I want to know that they're actually knowledgeable on it. Like whether it's seeing someone like said a slur or wanting to address that in the classroom. Like I need to know that they're gonna do it right, or they're gonna actually have the knowledge to be able to call that out and do it in an appropriate way, and taking advantage of that learning moment that just happened.
Okay. One thing I like when an adult, I can go over to adult is, an example, when Sasha took over College Bound, she had asked us this one question: how can I help you? And knowing that there's an adult there asking you for help and how they can get you through whatever you need, it's nice to know that I can go to this person and I know they're going to be there for me.
Those sound like good qualities. Any other questions from our audience? Yes, please.
So I want to build on kind of the conversation that we have going. You've talked a lot about different qualities you really look for in adults. Now what are like actions that we can take to really lift up your voices? Because it's been so cool to hear all the amazing things you have to say, and I'm sure there's a lot of spaces that you want access to. So what actions can we take to give you access to those spaces so your voices can be heard?
Prioritizing having youth in the different spaces that you're in. So at least for me, that's been really big, me realizing that, is that there are a lot of places where people are making decisions that affect you. And so for youth to be in those spaces and to be able to provide that perspective, especially when it's going to be affecting them, I think that's very important. And then being able to compensate them for their time also. I find that important too.
I think in agreement with that, I think that we should be getting to the point where you're standing up with us and you are amplifying our voice, and you're there with us talking about what should be done and what the steps should be taking and supporting us. As I said before, we're all united in this and acting on this in one front and being able to support each other and have us use our voice in a larger setting where this could be affecting us, like this could be in a larger setting where the choices are being made for us and we're doing this together. I think definitely that.
I love this conversation around inclusion, because I think true inclusion is not creating policy that then we say, we did this in order to protect and serve you, but more so that your voice was in part of that making and decision and policy building. So as I consider myself an advocate for our young people, and that is one of the things that I ask all the time is, have we spoken to our young people, and are their voices at the table? Will they be at the table? So your boards of directors, if you are working in a youth-centered organization, do you have young people at the table at the policy and decision-making level? That's where real change is. Plus, that's also education that cannot be taught necessarily in schools. It's through experience. Are you inviting young people to share voices? And I'm not saying to ask them to bare their soul in front of a bunch of strangers. We don't want to leverage their voice in that way, but are you inviting them to come and speak about what school climate is, what inclusion is? A 5-minute presentation on 10 things you can do to support me. Those kinds of things are so valuable. So if you are connected to an organization, please consider reaching out to Girls Inc. and having young voices come to the table. Are there more questions? I knew there were.
So we're live streaming this right now, and social media is a big part of everyone's lives. I was hoping you could speak a little bit to what the experience is like of sexual harassment in the digital world, positive or negative, and maybe any ideas on how to make it a more welcoming, safe space that we're all a part of.
I think in the social media world, we are making it pretty, well, from what I've seen, we're making it pretty welcoming. Maybe a little too much. Maybe we're dragging the abuser to filth. But I mean, what can I say? I don't know. I mean, we've seen a few interviews here. We've seen that interview before, right? Like, yeah. And I think it's a good place. I mean, it's better than sometimes I feel like it's better than going to someone who, or going to the police and actually, or like making your voice heard and telling someone. It's better because then I feel like sometimes strangers care more about it than the people who apparently are there for you. And like if you put it out there, someone out there is going to care because you're putting it out there to the world. If you're just telling a few people, well, maybe not everyone's going to care. Maybe some people are going to think you're lying, and I think it's really nice. It comes with its perks, and sometimes it doesn't. But yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a duality to it because there is a way for survivors to find a place of support. You know, finding those networks that you may not be aware of or may not be comfortable seeking out in your actual day-to-day life. But then I think social media also turns into this dark place where people take advantage of that, and there's like a whole nother world where you can take advantage of other people. I've heard a lot about revenge porn and blackmailing young women. Posting about certain things and slut-shaming young people through the internet. And so, there's this positive aspect where you're able to connect with a lot of other people, but then there's this whole other world that we have to learn to manage and regulate and understand so that our young people and people in general are protected over the internet.
And especially adding on to that, I think that the solution to the other side, the darker side of social media, I think could just be that we amplify this platform of Me Too, and that could be specifically with a social media strong basis of it, where we come together and we share our stories online with people around the world who feel exactly what you feel and who have experienced exactly what you've experienced. So I think keeping and putting that conversation on there and putting that unity on social media and letting that side take over and letting the platform take off from social media instead of dragging each other down and making it a bullying sort of side. I think we should definitely focus on the fact that we can create so much more unity with the people around the world with social media.
I'm asking the panelists, how much time they spend on social media in a day?
I don't know if y'all have Apple phones, but it tells you how much time you have. I spend way too much time.
I do too.
A lot of hours. I think it's since we're on it, since a lot of us are on it on a daily basis, we have to see, we'll see it, we'll come across this issue a lot. And I'm going back to what Rachel was saying, is that it's turning into bullying. All of this issue is turning into bullying. This issue that we could have solved is now turning into another issue, which is turning into bullying. We're bullying the victim, we're bullying the abuser, we're bullying everyone who took part of it, who took part in it. And I think that's just really unhealthy, and that's just making it worse. That's making those people look like the bad people too. And I think we should use it in a more positive way, just like she said, because we are on it a lot. So why don't we just use it in the best way we can, like to be more positive and like to be more supportive instead of driving people down.
But to answer your question, Commissioner.
I asked that question because I think there's opportunity to see things that we might, it encourages us to normalize bullying. A friend just showed me some snapshots of things that are happening to her. And thought, how many times have I looked at something? I try not to look at too many political things on, but I'll see the comments and I'll just pass them by, and there might be some bullying happening, some harassment, some threats. And so I'm curious around, if we're spending that much time, how do we take advantage of heightening our awareness and that of our peers? And I think that was the question that was really surrounding, like, how do we behave in a digital world, and who's accountable for what's said there? And is there any way for us to take that accountability back? Are there more questions? This could be really rich. You've got people here. Yes. Right here.
Hi. First, I just wanted to thank you all for speaking your experiences, and I know that it's really tough and raw and emotional thing. So I first just wanted to say thank you for all that you do. Second of all, to move to a sort of lighter note, I just wanted to ask if y'all knew of any media, versus for example, whether it's books or TV shows or movies where y'all have seen good representations or good conversations around consent or sexual education and all that stuff, and how what are your thoughts about having that representation there or maybe not there?
I don't think it's really there in the movies and in the books and in the TV shows. I think it's too unrealistic. It's not real. A lot of the times it's not real. And then sometimes if it is real, it's glamorized, which is worse than it even not being there. Because when it's glamorized, you're making business out of something that people are getting hurt for. And I mean, we've watched 13 Reasons Why. If you've ever watched that show, you'll know it's a very sensitive show, but that you're glamorizing something that's true and that's real. You're not bringing awareness to it, and if anything, you're triggering people. And I think, and same with, I've watched season 2. Season 2, all it did was glamorize sexual abuse, and I stopped it there. I was like, oh no. This is horrible. You're giving it a bad representation. This is not. I don't think that's even how it looks like. I think they're just making a profit. They're trying to make a profit out of something that's real, but they're not showing the true side of it. And for a lot of shows, a lot of media, it's not realistic. It really isn't. It's just it's not showing you the true side of how our true colors of how we really are. It's not. I mean, I don't know what else to say.
I wanted to second that about general media, TV, big TV companies and big movie producing companies. They're looking to make a profit, and they're going to see this in our history has made a profit, so we're going to have this white main character and then maybe some people of color, but we got to have that person right there so we can sell this to most amount of people. And we know that it'll turn a profit. We know people will come and watch this. And so I haven't seen a lot of representation in big media, but I think social media has definitely afforded us a place where individuals, as far as sexual health education, I haven't found an account that is specifically geared towards that, which might say a little something because I know I'm looking for it, but I haven't really found it. But I have found definitely different places where I see other kinds of representation. So one account that I follow on Instagram is the Unapologetically Brown series, and
He's so good.
so good. Yeah, it's so good. Y'all should follow them on Instagram. But they like post, they use like wheat paste and they post like affirming messages on like the streets of New York City, and it's so beautiful. And like they even have this series of pictures of them and their partner, and it's like showing like this like clear brown love like pasted on the walls of like New York City, like showing it, and like I like that particularly like touched me, like being able to see that kind of representation. It's just so beautiful. And so they're a really good account. And what I recommend is if you find a really good account, you go onto it, you click onto like the little arrow that points down, and it shows you accounts like that. And you can click through those. If you already know, you could do that. That's what I usually do if I find something that I like, because it'll show like accounts that they follow, and so you can kind of get connected into their networks.
And I definitely think that for the most part, like Lupe said, it is glamorized and it is there for entertainment to make a profit, but there are definitely in our community, I think there's a growing amount where consent is actually shown how it should be, and there's actual light being shown on this topic, especially with online articles and TED Talks, especially where it's a conversation and where you're getting the real information and where stories are being shared. So I think that from what there used to be, there's definitely more wonderful representations of what healthy things should look like coming into media. But I definitely think that we should work on making even more, making this a greater encompassing showcase for everyone.
Okay, when you asked the question, I really just meant movies and books, but social media, they really are. There's lots of pages for that.
If there was another young girl that had, experienced sexual harassment, what would be something that you would tell them to help them heal?
I would definitely invite them to Girls Inc. to get the support. Because they do support you. Like, they start at a young age. Like, even if they make you uncomfortable at first, they tell you, they're like, don't let me make you uncomfortable. I think I was like 12 when I learned some stuff, and I was like, okay, what are you telling me? But at the end of the day, you do realize they're telling you this for a reason.
I would tell them that they're not alone, that there's a community out there, that there are people out there that are going to listen, and that are going to help them get through what they went through. That healing is not a linear process. There are going to be good days, there are going to be bad days, but you're going to get to where you need to be, and there are people along the way that are going to help you, and that are willing to help you.
I would let them know that I would be there for them. I'd be a really good friend and show them that you can go to this place to get help or this site.
I would let them know that if they don't want to specifically come out and say what happened to them and report it, that there's voices for them. And if you do want to speak out about it, no matter what is pushing against you, you should not feel bad for what happened to you, because it is not your fault and you are not the only one. And there, even though there's a whole other side to it, there is a community that is for you, and there is a community that has experienced the same thing that you have, no matter how sad that is to say, that there are voices for you and there are people that will stand with you. So I especially wanted to thank you all for coming and for showing your support, because this means the world to us, and this is exactly what we need. We need your support to solve this issue, to solve the miscommunication and the conversations that aren't happening with sexual assault, and for the education that is not being provided, and for the unsafe environments that we are constantly being put into. And because I believe that someday this issue will be solved, that there will no longer be a to enforce a statistic, that it will be 0%. And I think what we need to get there, what we need to make sure that this topic is shared in the correct light is communication and education, because education is what is going to teach our next generation, and it is what is going to form the new leaders of our society. So education and communication and making sure that you're told that it is not your fault and that there are communities for you, there are resources for you, and someday there will be a solution. And make sure that you go to girlsinc.org to make the pledge and sign up for this.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your time, your energy, your story, your spirit. It is incredible to bear witness to that. Audience, thank you so much. We'll turn it back over to Girls Inc.
Thank you all so much for coming. Thank you all for your bravery, your truth, for sharing. You're so incredible. I mean, I'm just in awe of all of you. Thank you for being here and witnessing this and sharing in this moment and this experience. And now please sharing some pizza because there's a lot left. So grab some of that on your way out. And